Welcome to Monday Motivations, 52 Weeks to a More Purposeful You. We have a repeat guest, and Chris, I think you're the first guest that's repeating. So thank you for coming back. You're so generous. This week's topic is on appreciation. So what are your thoughts about the whole concept of appreciation, gratitude, and all that's entailed there?
Yeah, thanks for including me again. Always great to see you and connect. Um, so that's so funny. Gratitude has actually been really a core aspect of how I've tried to build out the values of my spirituality, let's say over the last 15, 20 years. And, that comes from a lot of places. One of them specifically was this Lilly Endowment grant that I was a part of. So Dr. Christine Pohl, who taught for years at Asbury Theological Seminary in Kentucky, she's an ethicist. She wrote a book in 1999 called Making Room. And it was about hospitality. And it was about how hospitality was actually one of the cultural marks and distinguishing sort of lifestyle celebrations of early Christians. And that somehow over the past 2,000 years, Christianity has kind of lost that spirit of hospitality. Well, in 1999, when that book dropped, it was wildly successful for what it was in its very specific academic lane. And it led to a lot of kind of rethinking how we relate to these cultural distinctives that have shaped our historic spirituality. And so she got this grant and she called together, I think it was 12 clergy members, 3 theologians or seminary professors, and 3 members of communities. And we spent I can't remember, but it felt like 4 or 5 years working out what Christine would hope to be the 4 maybe key marks that make and break community, and
Okay.
specifically Christian community over the last 2,000 years.
Okay. What community were you involved in at that time?
It
Because you
was a
said,
human.
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, because you said that she picked 4 people that were involved in community.
Yeah, I was a part of an international humanitarian organization, and we were working with women and children all over the world. So primarily women and children who had been trafficked into the commercial sex industry, little kids who lived and worked on streets or sewers, slums, or refugee camps. I When I graduated from college, I moved right away to South India and worked with kids who are orphaned because of HIV or born HIV positive. And so the community that I was a part of, like, we were very intentional about our shared spirituality and our shared cultural values. And so the work that Christine had done, it was so formational. It had really impacted us collectively.
Okay, thank you for I just wanted our listeners to know, a little bit about that part of
Yeah.
your background. So
Yeah, I had 20
as
years
we're,
of humanitarian work, and it shaped everything.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
so
yeah, as you were saying, the 4 key marks that hold together and cause groups to fall apart. Is that what you said?
what Christine was specifically trying to get at, the language that she would use was, what are the marks that make and break historic Christian community over the last 2,000 years? And what can we learn looking back? And so, of course, because so much of her work was around hospitality, she started and led with hospitality. And of course, I mean, it makes perfect sense. She then went on to say that the second mark that makes and breaks community is truth telling. Of course, that's important in all relationships. The third was promise keeping, which is also important in relationships. But the fourth one that she suggested, it kind of caught me and most of the other folks in the group off guard, and she said this was gratitude.
Mm.
And I thought, man, that's so true. Like, gratitude is kind of the invisible glue that holds relationships and friendships and communities together, because it's ingratitude is the negative space that we don't perceive, but it really leads to resentment. It really leads to loss of connection or frustration with folks. And so,
Oh my gosh. We just have to pause real quick because I feel like there's 2 very powerful things that you said, and I want people to digest it. I loved what you said about gratitude is the invisible glue that holds relationships together. And like, if I just think about that right now, and I think that'd be great for everybody listening, like think of your most important relationships. So right away, I'm thinking of my husband, my children, my parents, Linda, who I work with, like these close people, Fran, my husband's right-hand person at work. I wonder what they would say the level of gratitude is at, like on a scale of 1 to 10. Like that invisible glue piece, powerful. And then the second thing that you said was that ingratitude is, and will you say it again?
Well, I think ingratitude is kind of it's like the negative space that leads to resentments. It's the negative space in relationship that we don't perceive, that we're not always fully aware of, but it's persistent, and it does, I think, kind of fuel this lack of satisfying connections with friends or partners or community members. I mean, it sneaks up on us, and by the time we realize it, it's usually too late.
Mm. Oh my gosh, will you say more about that?
Well, so it's like if we are in a friendship or relationship where we're constantly sacrificing and giving and pouring ourselves out, being very thoughtful and intentional about how we love and the ways that we love, but it goes unrecognized or it goes unnoticed, I think it leads to a kind of decay. That part of us inside dies that doesn't need to die. That we lose the motivation or the compulsion to actually offer the things that we're giving. And of course, I'm not suggesting that we only do those things so that we can be appreciated or be seen or be thanked. But I sure think that appreciation and gratitude, it it fills up what's depleted in us when we pour ourselves out.
Yeah. And I'm, as you're speaking, I really feel like I needed this topic because I'm even just thinking about, I have a really good friend, Lauren, like she just is such a great friend. And I feel like maybe lately I have not been very focused on gratitude and appreciation. Like life has been busy, go, go, go. So this is really speaking to me about negative space that leads to resentment. And like Gallup, they do a survey with employees, millions of employees, and every year it comes back. The number one reason that people leave organizations is because they don't feel appreciated.
Mm. And I wonder how that would also translate over into relationships or friendships. And then, in the work that we are doing with Christine Pohl in community. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Okay.
and
Thank you
that
for letting
work,
me like pause.
yeah. And that work that we did on those 4 marks, that ended up becoming another book that she wrote called Living into Community. And the subtitle was Cultivating Practices That Sustain Us. And I think that's one of the other sort of sticky secrets here about gratitude or appreciation is it is sustainable and it allows for us to continue to, if it's in a workplace, stay, if it's in a relationship, be committed. But in these postures of sacrifice and giving, like I said, I think it's gratitude's the fuel that fills up the empty space that we pour out for others. Now, I also think there's kind of a dark side to using or weaponizing or manipulating gratitude.
Ooh, let's hear that. That
And
sounds juicy.
when you and I had mentioned we were going to schedule this conversation, I remembered a meeting I had years and years ago with one of the local directors of the Red Cross, and he was talking about their blood drives, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people gave blood, and so they took 40,000 nationally of their blood donors who are giving on average 1.9 times a year, I think it was. And for half of that group, they sent a little card, and the card was, Janet, thanks for your blood donation last week. We used it today at the University of Nebraska Medical Center on a child with da 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 da. And he said, we sent 20,000 of these cards out, and those 20,000 people went from 1.9 blood donations a year to 3.5. And he was like, look at that, the impact of saying thank you, the impact of showing appreciation and gratitude. And that's true. Like I said, I think it fuels us, it sustains us, and in fact motivates, I think, even more. But I
Mhm.
also kind of pushed back on that guy because I was like, So, hey, I get it and that's great, but what's the dirty side of the hustle? Are you simply using these thank you cards to manipulate people so that they'll give more? And is that really true? Like, could we
Yeah.
actually offer gratitude without it actually being a hook or actually leading to sort of a transactional exchange of, hey, thanks for that. I want more of that. It's like, where
Right.
can it be pure?
It's
Where
like,
can it
what's
be
the
good?
motive? If the motive is, oh, this is the best practice when I'm more appreciative, and there's like quotes posted all the time of, people will do more when they feel appreciated than people. It's like, yeah, but the motive of why we're doing it. And I feel like when you and I got this idea about you being the speaker for this topic, um, I really am feeling convicted right now that I have been ungrateful, like
Mm,
for a lot of things. And that's a good feeling to have because it's an invitation for me to become more grateful, not to, like you said, hustle for better performance from people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if Gallup's right and people are leaving the workplace because they don't feel appreciated, certainly it would do well to have a corporate strategy for appreciation and gratitude for retention. But if it's simply a strategy and it's
For
being
retention.
used, you're right. Like the motivation kind of steals, I think, the gift of it. Um, and that's the thing, man. I think gratitude is a gift. I think ultimately gratitude is a celebration. It's like you hear the sort of pithy cliche things like gratitude makes not enough more than enough, and it's like okay, cool. I can get by with that. But I think what gratitude does is it opens our hearts, and I
Mm,
think we all know this. Like one of my friends says this a lot. Open hearts create miracles, and so in a lot of my one-on-one work with people, honestly, it's like I feel like a seventh of all the advice I give folks is just practice gratitude.
mm,
Like things are tough, things are heavy, you feel alone or lonely, like life isn't fair. Just practice gratitude, and it's surprising how much opens up in us when we intentionally practice gratitude. It's surprising what we start to notice and see that we've not noticed before. So
Have you had an experience, say in the last week or month, where you've noticed a shift in yourself through practicing gratitude?
I just got a dog a couple months ago, and I love her, and she's silly and she's stubborn, and I found myself thanking her almost every day for things like
Oh,
she'll get me up in the morning. Like the other day, it was kissing my eyes, and I woke up and I was just like, "Thank you, that was so sweet." And it's like I know she doesn't know what I'm saying. I know she doesn't care, but I think for me, it's simply the practice. It's the acknowledgement. It's thanks for being so gentle. Thanks for being so cuddly. Like thanks for wanting to follow me around the apartment. And like I said, it's not for her. It's for me. It's to create, I think, in my own space and in my flow and in my life, the possibility to continue to receive gifts that I've not known before. And I say that intentionally and specifically because I think gratitude allows us to receive both the good gifts that we maybe fail to recognize, but
mhm.
also I think allows for us to receive the gifts that are harder to receive and things that we may need but don't want and things that are sometimes difficult for us.
Like maybe some truth telling,
Yep. And following through with the promises we
promise
make
keeping.
and even practicing hospitality for the person who's difficult,
Yeah.
which
What?
is often ourselves.
Yeah. I'm, I'm wanting to kick myself out sometimes. I don't know why, but this is totally a random thought and question, but are those four marks, do you think there's any correlation to the four agreements?
Hmm.
I don't remember. I always remember don't take anything personal. So that would be, I don't know. Eh,
Yeah, that's a good question. I've not thought on that one.
eh, random. We'll come back to that later or another time.
Yeah.
So oh, so much good stuff. Um so so the four marks that can make or break relationships, community. I know it was historic Christianity. um, gratitude, appreciation. What do you think are some things that get in the way of us having gratitude and appreciation?
So I think barriers to gratitude are probably things like entitlement, like, hey, the things that you're doing for me is what you should be doing as a friend or a partner or a community member or an employee. It's the entitlement of presumption and assuming. And I think presumption is also kind of one of those negative space things that sneaks up on us. Um, the presumption can sometimes sound like this, like, oh, you knew I wanted to try that restaurant. Why didn't you invite me? Or I thought you knew I loved hanging out with those friends. Why wasn't I included? And it's like, actually, I didn't. And
Yeah.
so don't put that on me. Like, but you see, I think we sometimes do. And so I think entitlement and presumption sort of steer us away from gratitude.
Mhm.
I think, in a lot of my one-on-one work, one of the things that I feel like I hear throughout most of my days is this ache in our human condition to belong, to want to
Yeah.
be connected to other people. And I talk with a lot of folks who are lonely, profoundly lonely.
Oh, yeah.
And
There's an epidemic right now.
yes, and even people who are profoundly lonely in relationships and in partnerships and in robust and dynamic community. And I think that loneliness, it's not always sort of a cause and effect so that it's easy enough to find the formula and sort of moonwalk our way back out of it. I think it's simply human. When we let loneliness sit in the driver's seat, I do think it steals gratitude. And that's where, like I said, I really encourage folks to start with gratitude, like where you're not being seen in your relationships, where you feel misunderstood or hurt, or where you feel lonely. Like, okay, those are real and those are legitimate, and let's face those and contend with them and confront them. But let's also start with gratitude. Like, great, you're in a safe relationship. You're in a loving community. You have a family that you're able to sit down and share meals with. Let's start with the good. And that doesn't diminish or take away from where growth should and needs to take place. But I think it helps us approach getting to that growth, I think, with more honesty, with more vulnerability.
Mhm. What ways do you, like practical ways, do you suggest or do you practice cultivating gratitude?
So I mean, I'm kind of lucky. My parents went from when I was a little kid. Anytime we got birthday gifts from family or friends, it was just like, you gotta sit down and send thank you notes out. And I feel like that's kind of like an old timey, old school thing.
No, I love it. You've sent me too. And it's like, I love that. It's so, yeah. And then you get to like see somebody's handwriting and yeah. So,
Yeah. So I have a stack of little papers. I always replenish my little thank you note stationaries, and I try to do that. And um, it is something great.
mhm.
Like the durability of pen to paper, like of writing something down that's in your mind or in your heart, and putting it out in the world. I think that's one practical way. Um, and it's funny to think, like, I'm grateful to my parents from, like I said, when we were little kids, that they made us do those because I love doing it. I I try to be really intentional in thanking people. Like, I was out with a friend the other day and they bought the movie tickets, and it's just like, thanks. And when somebody has me over for a meal, it's like I always bring a bottle of wine, and I always try to offer my sincere gratitude. And when I say these things out loud, it's like, well, of course you should do that. Like, that's a no-brainer. Those are stupid and simple things that, like, decent human beings would generally do in the flow of living their normal lives. But I do think, like, if you're not intentional about it, sometimes that
Oh
stuff
yeah.
hits.
Yeah, we fall into the what did you say before entitlement of presumption? You said entitlement of something else.
Um, I sorry,
That's
I
okay. I'll go back and watch. But yeah, I think, I mean, if we're entitled, we don't think to thank for, we're like, that's your job. Like, it means so much to me. James and Stella, my two youngest, every time I put a meal in front of them, they're always like, thank you, Corry. Thank you for making dinner. Like,
Mm.
it's just, so I think, not getting into that, you owe this to me or this is your job, but thanking the people around us for them doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm.
Like, just because they're
It,
supposed to doesn't mean we shouldn't have appreciation.
right. And it feels good because I think when you're thanked intentionally for preparing a meal, you're seen. And I
Yeah.
think honestly that's probably one of those other very human desires that everybody has to a certain extent is wanting to be seen, wanting
Mm-hmm.
to be known, wanting to be loved. And
Mm-hmm.
gratitude is a super easy way to show love. It's a super easy way to see people.
Mm-hmm. So, and I forgot to mention at the beginning, so Chris is an Enneagram workshop facilitator, an Enneagram author of several amazing books. I have four. The Enneagram of Belonging is the second one. What's the first one called? The
The
Enneagram.
Sacred Enneagram?
Yeah, the Sacred Enneagram, and then both have workbooks, which sometimes people make a workbook in a like companion with their book and you buy it and you're like, I really didn't need this. Your workbooks are incredible. I would say that they're necessary. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Well,
love.
there's a woman named Esty Zandy who helped put those together, and she's incredible. Like one of the best collaborators I've ever had the privilege of working with.
Yeah. See, look, you're extending gratitude right now.
I am.
Yeah.
She's great. I'm super thankful for her.
Yeah, so with the Enneagram, there are 9 types. Um, and are there certain types that have a predisposition to being more grateful than others? Is there any kind of, you know,
Huh. That's a good question. It's funny to think. You're a seven, and the seven is sometimes called the enthusiast. This is also sometimes referred to as the type that has this need to avoid pain. Um, I would generally say a lot of my friends who are sevens do a pretty good job of expressing gratitude, but that's because there's such positivity. That's because there's so much up and out, forward energy.
Mhm.
Um, fives, this is the observer or the investigator. This is the need to understand, and this is maybe the most boundaried and way up in their head
Mhm.
type. The mental fixation for the five is called stinginess, and it's a bummer because it's not stinginess. It's actually kind of a calculating of how they and where they will actually spend their energy and their time.
Mhm.
Um, but because there's the tendency to be pretty reserved there, I would say like for fives, like probably practicing gratitude a little bit more is one of the ways to get into the heart, and the fives are pretty disconnected from the heart. Um, I would say in my experience, I've seen a lot of twos use gratitude manipulatively,
Mm.
um, and that's a bummer because it's not that twos generally are trying to manipulate. It's that twos want to be loved so deeply that they'll do almost whatever it is or whatever it is that they think that works to get that love.
Mm.
Um, and I would say fours, something about fours in there. It's like, one of the so-called communication styles of the fours has traditionally been complaining. And I think that's also unfair. I don't think fours complain. I think fours are seers. I think fours can see meaning and significance and depth and beauty in everything.
Mm.
And because most of us don't have an affinity or an ability towards that, um, the four, it's not complaining. It's like there's more.
Mm.
There's more out there to see. There's more to be. There's more to love. There's more to experience. Um, so I think maybe four is appealing to starting with gratitude, even in that yearning for the depth and the meaning and the substance could be a bridge in their translating.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
no,
question.
that's good. And I mean, I know everyone listening is going to want to know more about the Enneagram, and you have coming up in the coming days or weeks an online Enneagram series, right? Do you want to
Mhm.
say a little bit about that?
Yep, I'm hopefully. I was hoping it was going to be this Friday, and now I'm hoping that it's going to be a Friday this summer, not a random Friday this year. But we'll be releasing a video curriculum on the Sacred Enneagram, and it will be a certificate program if people want to do some of the required supplemental readings and videos and podcasts.
I'm all, yes, please.
But I think it's going to be really practical stuff. I think it's going to kind of demystify the Enneagram in some of its more clumsy and clunky and poorly translated aspects.
Yeah.
But also, I think if you work through the video curriculum and you do the readings and the supplemental stuff, I think you're going to have a pretty strong understanding of this, because I'm digging out old articles over the last 30 years from the archives of the Enneagram Monthly and things from Psychology Today in the early 70s that took me 4 years to find. And it's just going to be really, really rich. The companion stuff is just going to be fabulous.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Hmm.
So as we begin to land this plane, or as we are landing this plane, I should say, on appreciation and gratitude, what closing comments do you want to make about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the conversation, I really fundamentally believe that gratitude is heart opening. And like I said earlier, my friend always says, open hearts create miracles. I think it's so simple and it's so easy. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to suggest it, but I just think gratitude will change things and it will change us. And it's not hard. It's actually one of the easiest things to practice.
Mm-hmm. And as you were saying that, I was just thinking that, especially for people that are grieving and suffering and going through extremely painful or tragic events, it's almost like the complementary option to finding meaning. So like thinking of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, it's like people find, when we can find meaning in our suffering, it helps us. Now I'm like, oh, when we can find gratitude, it's that whole thing of like, I would rather to have loved and lost than to have never have loved at all. Like, finding that gratitude. So I love that gratitude will change things. So, a lot of people in relationships, whether at work or at home, they feel stuck. And it's like, okay, put some spicy gratitude in there, season it up and see how things will change. And then, the heart opening piece, I'm definitely going to be taking that away as a 7, because was it 7s, 3s, and 8s suppress their heart?
Yep, we are.
Well, the 3s neglect their hearts, and then the 7s and the 8s suppress. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Chris, thank you so much. You are amazing. Every
Always
time
great.
we chat, I'm one of Chris's one-on-one Enneagram coaching clients. So he's amazing. Anybody that needs an Enneagram coach, highly recommend him if your calendar has room. So thank you. And let's see what we have going on next week. For Monday Motivation, we will be talking about creativity. So join us next week. And thanks again, Chris.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.